Well, welcome everybody. Can you hear it? Oh yeah. Welcome everybody, and thank you all for coming this evening. I am very excited about our guests. First, introduce myself. I'm David Rifkind, the director of the School of Architecture. Part of my job that I absolutely delight in is the opportunity to invite guests to come speak here at the University of Florida. And I want to pause and just mention that this is the first time we are simulcasting our lectures here on main campus to both City Lab Orlando and to our new JAX Lab in Jacksonville. And so for our audiences who are there, I've got about 30 minutes to figure out how to get questions from you all for our guests. I'm working on it. I might send an email. But anyway, for everybody else in the room, thank you for coming, and thank you for braving the hurricane warning, advance preparation to come here. We are incredibly fortunate that Dawit Benti has been here for almost a month as a visiting scholar here at the School of Architecture at UF. And we are incredibly fortunate that Rahel Shawl, one of the foremost practitioners in Ethiopia, was here in North America, and we were able to grab her and bring her here for a conversation between the two of them. I should mention that today, by coincidence, is the 7th anniversary of the day that Dawit and I opened the exhibition of contemporary architecture in Ethiopia at the Miami Center for Architecture and Design, and then a few days later came here to Gainesville to open a satellite version of that show here at UF. So this is Dawit's second time at UF. It was supposed to be Rahel's as well, but at the time she was starting the Loeb Fellowship at Harvard and was unable to join us. And so in some ways this is us taking care of unfinished business and being able to bring Rahel Shawl to UF. I'm going to let Dawit tell you about her work, but first I'm going to introduce Dawit. Good friend of mine, an extraordinary individual, a practicing architect, trained designer at both EIABC, the Ethiopian Institute of Architecture and Building Construction and City Development, but also he did his master's at IIT in Roorkee in India. He has taught at numerous schools, including the ETH in Zurich, and now is a professor at the Ethiopian Institute of Architecture, Building Construction and City Design. He's working on his PhD on modern architecture in Addis Ababa, with particular focus on the 1960s, the golden age of Addis. For those of you who know Ethio jazz, this was that great swinging period of Mulatu Astatke and other great musicians, but it was also a great efflorescence of modern architecture in Addis. And so that's what Dawit is working on. He and I are spending time this month working on a book on one of the projects that was built in Addis in that time, the building for the UNECA, the UN organization that was gifted land by Emperor Haile Selassie. The project was designed by the architect Arturo Metsedemi, and it's a project that warrants treatment in a monograph, which we're working on now. But it brings me great pleasure to welcome to the stage Dawit Benti.
Good evening, everyone. So thank you for this opportunity, Professor David. So I'll give a brief introduction to contemporary architecture in Ethiopia. That will be part of the introduction to the works of architect Rahel Shawl. So the title is like Continuity in the Built Environment, Contemporary Architecture in Addis Ababa. I'll quickly go through the slides. So how is Addis unique? It's not an old city. It was established in 1886. It is dissected by rivers, and it's the 4th highest capital in the world, next to La Paz, Quito in Ecuador, La Paz in Bolivia. And it did not start with an urban plan. It's not segregated like colonial cities in Africa. So these are like typical features of Addis. So this is Addis Ababa, the context for the works in contemporary architecture and for Rahel's works. So I'll briefly take you through the timelines. So Addis started in 1886. We're now in 2023. And then these are like the brief periods. So the first one is like 40 years. So Addis, so I termed it like the time between the wars. There was this war. It was a defining moment in the history of the nation in Addis Ababa. There was a colonial expansion by Italy in 1886, and it was stopped by the Emperor Menelik. Then Addis got a kind of recognition globally. So the embassies rushed in Addis Ababa to start a relationship with an independent African nation. So you have to bear in mind that Ethiopia was never colonized, and we have had always our own way of doing things. So that is how I termed it continuity. So all the architecture that we've had since modernity started in the early 20th century, it was a continuous practice that we've had for the millennia. So then we had, again, a war with Italy. So this is like First and Second War. So we have had a certain kind of culture then. So the Italians occupied Ethiopia for 5 years, and we had these modernist architecture introduced. And finally, after the Italians were out, beginning of the Second World War, we had a kind of a hibernation. So after that came this glorious moment, this fantastic time in the 60s, which I'm very much interested in. It stayed for about 18 years. So Emperor Haile Selassie, you might have heard about it, reigned a lot. And then he introduced Ethiopia into the modern age. Then after that came communism. So the contemporary time, according to me and my study, began in the year 2000. And it's still, we're now in 2023, and it's still moving. So we're going to focus on the time that started in 2000 and is still running and up until now. So this was how Addis started. This is the Italian times, you know, the introduction of concrete into Ethiopia. So we only used wood, but the Italians brought in concrete and reinforcement bars. After the Italians was the era of the modernists, the 1960s, where Addis had its DNA established, its identity established, the modern, the roads, the urban spaces, and the buildings that gave identity to the city was established. And in the 60s, we had foreigners like Italian, a French, and an Israeli who had built and designed the landmark buildings of Addis that kind of give an identity. And there were also Yugoslavians. So Haile Selassie on the right, you can see him with his signature outfits. He was the emperor of Ethiopia, and he was spearheading this momentum of modernizing and building in the nation. So these were Swedish, Yugoslavian architects. So this is one of the most important buildings that just got a facelift recently. So very iconic building built by an Italian. So this was the building that David was telling us. So this was the Africa Hall. When all of a sudden in the 60s, Africans were liberated. This is where they met and kind of formed their unions. It was called the Africa Hall. So this was the plan, and this is how it looks like. And you would see that these circular building alludes to how Ethiopians build their huts. So it tries to kind of link with the culture, with the vernacular in Ethiopia. So that has always been the hallmark of architects practicing in Ethiopia. So what they do is they adopt culturally accepted symbolism, and they would use local materials. And during one of the interviews during one of the interviews of the architect, he said that the emperor advised him to make use of local materials and show to the world that we can build magnificent buildings with the use of local labor and local material. And what is also a salient feature of all the buildings in Ethiopia is that they adapt to the climate. So these are what you would find. So these modern buildings, like modern churches, but they took a lot of symbolism from history. So Ethiopia has historical architecture that dates back to 2,000 years ago. So the architects so they made use of these motifs and languages from the past. And these were, Ethiopia flirted with communism, so they came from Eastern Europe. These were architects that came to Eastern Europe and built something like socialist modernist buildings. You see how they're very formal and how they give expression to the forms. So these were all buildings built during communism, and I will quickly get into the contemporary time. So now, during this age, as we speak, almost every practice is being built by Ethiopian architects. So that is contrary to the 60s or to the previous time that we are now having Ethiopians. So Rahel is here amongst us. The others were there 7 years ago, exactly this time 7 years ago. They have had their presence. So Fasil is another architect. So these are like young architects. They are also being recognized globally. Lebel Desta is now winning awards and exhibiting abroad. So very young architect, Zellek Abelai, another one. So these are all Ethiopian. Ahadu is featured on the book Phaedon Atlas. So he built his buildings on trees, on live trees. And he also built buildings that are completely recycled with the exception of the roof. Like everything inside the building is recycled from other demolished buildings. So these are like the contemporary architects, young architects that are building. So this is Rahel Shawl's building. I will shortly introduce her. So it's one of the apartments. So this is the buildings. This is an embassy building, Ireland Embassy in Addis Ababa. So next to New York and Geneva, Addis Ababa is like a global diplomatic capital because it is the center for 53 of the nations in Africa. Like the American embassy, America is like represented by 2 embassies, one to Ethiopia and the other to African Union. Likewise, the Chinese and other big nations are also represented. That means we have so many embassies. This is a building that got Rahel into the limelight, and it's because of this building that she got awarded the Aga Khan Award along with fellow architects both in Ethiopia and abroad that collaborated in this work. It's a fantastic project. Yes, it moved. Thank you. So it moved. It was static. Yeah. So this is the building that perfectly fit with the site. It was like a Netherlands embassy, and it had both the features of Ethiopian traditional architecture and Netherlands modern transparent architecture. This is Indian embassy built by one of the contemporary architects, Yosef Beredded, another masterpiece. And this is a kind of a monolithic looking building that is designed along the staircase that goes around the building by Zalek Abelai. Another kind of biophilic architecture designed by a collaboration of an international and local architecture. So this is one of its kind, where the facade kind of looks like green. And another library, and so this building was built in one of the hottest places in Arbamenj, where you need to admit a lot of air to ventilate the building. So this is under construction. It is, how would I say, a monument to the plane that crashed some years back. You remember what was the plane? 737. It crashed in Ethiopia, and it led to all the how do you say, the parking of global Boeing 737 jets. So this is the crash site. It's a monument, and it was by one of the young architects, Alabel. It was a competition, and this is about to be built. It's in one of the farm areas outside of the city, but it's an amazing monument. So this is the architect. He is also, he got an award for his installation, urban installation in the city. This was erected. So this is the model, and that is like the final installation in the city. So this is what architects can also work on, an ephemeral project that graced the city center. You can see how it was built. It was just for the inauguration of the current prime minister. Another variety is a mud building. So they used to call it like Antonio Gaudi in mud, by an artist, Elias Sime. He really works with mud. This is Mercato Ledeta. He used this parametric. It's by a Catalan Spanish architect. He used these motifs from the cultural fabrics in Ethiopia. It was also featured as one of the nice buildings in 2016 globally. So other buildings. Now we are in the mega project time. So this is a huge library at the city center. It's already completely built. So the columns, the supports, take their symbolism from the monumental buildings of the rock-cut churches of the 13th and 14th century Ethiopia. So these are new spaces being built, huge urban spaces that has Wi-Fi, that really is a hub for the city. It's called Mescal Square. So that is how it looks like. And at the moment, a lot of Chinese are involved for the mega project. They really span huge hectares or acres. So they also have landscape, water body. So they come under the name, the mega projects. So Rahel would also show us one of her projects. It's one of these mega projects that she's involved in. So these are what we are working on. I will introduce Rahel. Okay. So Rahel Shawl is an Ethiopian architect. She was educated in Ethiopia, and unlike many internationally known architects, she was educated, and she had all of her practice in Ethiopia. So she had her bachelor's in architecture in 1991, and she is a founder and a principal of RAS Architects in Addis Ababa, RAAS, RAS. I think, although it could be an acronym, RAS stands for a head. That could be another meaning that one could take. So she was also a Loeb Fellow in Harvard University in 2017, and she was a finalist for a Dorfman Award from the UK. The magazine Domus selected her as one of the 50 best practicing offices in 2020. And currently, she is one of the 100 women architects internationally chosen by the RIBA journal, the RIBA publishing. So, and apart from this, she is part of so many jury members that choose projects globally, and it's my pleasure to call her here and then hear from her. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dawit. And it is really my pleasure to be here today. It was such a coincidence. Last week or 10 days ago, David and Dawit called to say, why don't you pop into, I was in California and visiting family. So it was really a nice opportunity for me to be here, share my work. So it was supposed to be a conversation between me and David or Dawit, but now maybe because we're all architects, most of us here, we said it would be very interesting to show one of my works. I think you can go to RAS Architects website to see most of my projects. I've practiced in Ethiopia for 30 years, so celebrating 30 years. And I can't believe I was like you in a school in Ethiopia, only 23 of us, 4 women, and from the whole department of architecture, which graduated 100 students at that time, was only 8 or 10 of us. So it's a really pleasure to see all over the world, including Ethiopia, to see many women, brave architects. So, I want to talk today about one project in particular, because it kind of, that we just recently finished. It's a very interesting project for me because it kind of talks about all the principles that I hold very dear, that architecture has to be practiced with care. For me, this is very meaningful. You see this picture, I took it a few months ago. It is in Halala, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story. You see these people, they are from the Dauro community. They're wearing their beautiful clothes. They're standing on Halala wall, which is a historical wall, which I'll tell you about. And there's the nature, and looking out very proudly into the natural landscape. So I always say, for me, great architecture is a reflection of my life. You know, when I design something, when I do something, it's very, very, it's not something like, architecture is a building, it's a science, it's an art, I think we all know that, but it's a reflection of what I want it to be, who I am. For me, it's 3 things. Over the years, I was telling David, I was just working, didn't know, but in the end, it came like I had this floating ideas that always persisted since I was a second-year student. Every time, even 30 years later, it came back to the work I do. One is for us to make buildings that are functional, aesthetic, sustainable through meaningful blending of our context, our culture, our identity. This is very important. Because when I went to school, we were being taught only European, American. The books told us only that is feasible. And I always felt, I remember the first project that I got to do, I felt I will never be a good architect because I designed connecting it to nature. It was a clinic, I remember, connecting it to the environment and always understanding that how does this sick person feel. So for me, it is very contextual, it is very private. The second thing is for us to reconnect, for me to reconnect all my buildings, whether we do it in the, in Addis Ababa, you've seen the buildings that we do. You can see also most of the buildings always connected to nature because Ethiopia is one of the most beautiful climatic regions in the world. So for me, it is the most important thing that we connect with nature and the natural environment. And then the next one is a way to impact and inspire people. So with that, I mean, architecture has to inspire the person who's using it. Architecture has to be very much connected to the people we serve, but not only to the people that are our clients. For me, it's about the end users, but also the process through which we do architecture. I'm a very hands-on person. From design, I'll show you, the three things will interface in my speech. But for what I want you to understand is that for me, it's not about the building. Usually it's about the people who are going to use it, but also the process, because architecture is about collaboration. So we work, all of us together. It's not only the architect. So you'll see how many people are involved to produce one building. In the context of Ethiopia, like us, in a culture and an environment that we work with, it is very hands-on. Architects go to the sites to show people, the little, people that work on the blocks, that you have to have a connection with these people, to inspire them, to tell them. If you give them a drawing, they will not understand it. But if you're there in person, telling them the story of how it will be, then it makes that very powerful connection. So these three things, it is about people, it's about the environment, and it's about the context, the culture, and the history. So for me, that is why I say architecture has to be built with care. So the first thing is care for architecture. I will tell you, Halala Kella is, when we were given the project, it is a design build, or you call it here turnkey. So it is the contractor who comes to me to ask me, I want you to design this project for me. Contractor is hired in this case by the Prime Minister, one of the Prime Minister's office in Ethiopia, as one of the touristic destinations. So it's 500 kilometers away. I've never heard until I went 2 years ago about this place. It's very remote. So here you say, why? I took this picture. It's the walls of Halala, built in the 400 years ago by King Halala. So it's called Kati Halala. It is a defensive wall that is 1,200 kilometers. Kilometer will be in miles, I don't know. Divided times 0.6. Okay, you figure it out. But it's very long wall. So it's defending themselves because they are surrounded with enemies. This is like, when I saw it, I was shocked because it's sometimes 4 meters high, 2.5 by 5 meters wide, and going like a ring that has been here for generations and nobody knew about it. At least we didn't know about it. So the community have kept this wall not to be distracted. They were very proud of it. So they gave this to this project, one of these projects, to be built for a tourism center. The other thing, of course, that is not in Dauro, but you will see this. We call them gojo, tukul. The shape of this building, the circular with this hut-like, is everywhere. So, and we build it in clusters. So this is what is the architecture going to be like? The wall and the tukul. Then how do we see the environment? These are the pictures that I took. So this is the Omo River in Ethiopia, but also it is the Gibe 3 Dam, which I think gives about 80-85% power to all Ethiopia. Gibe 3 Dam is one of the largest dams. And it is the lake. So this place is on the lake that is formed by this. And then the natural environment. If you see that landscape when I went there, it was kind of very rocky with some nice natural plantation. And then the people. So, the people are known for this very, very interesting instrument that is called the dinka. You see that it's like a flute, but they sing around and they have this amazing culture of food and just a beautiful place. So we spent time there. I have to tell you, there was nothing there. We didn't even eat. We had to go back 60 kilometers to eat. So we stayed there. So there was nothing there when we went. So we came back. You have to go either by plane to, this is the Rift Valley, by the way, just if you want to see the Ethiopian Rift Valley. It's one of the most fascinating areas of the country. So this is near, either you have to go to Hawassa or you have to go to Arba Minj and then drive again for 3 hours, cross the Omo River to get to the site. So this is just showing you the site. I don't know if you see that. Can I? So this is the back, let's say, lake that was formed by the Gibe Dam. So this is, we're like, how are we going to do it? We cannot touch an inch of the Halala wall, so we have to kind of design the lodge inside this. So the concept we came up is there's almost on top of a hill. And then what we did is we took a lot of ideas from, this is the red one is the Halala walls, that circles and circles all the way down. So we said, okay, by the way, the most interesting thing in this design build, the contractor was given only 14 months for design and build in the remotest part of Ethiopia. And then we had to literally quickly design workers' facilities, bedrooms, feeding facilities, etc., while we were designing this. And I remember, while I was just sketching, or what should I design, could be a tukul with this or that, word came, when are you starting the foundation? So you can understand, we were 6 architects working non-stop for a year and a half on this project, day and night. So just what I wanted to tell you is the concept then came, because it's a hill, we wanted it to kind of take the architecture, like I said, but it's a very, very hot area. So how do we form ventilation, natural ventilation, as much as we can? So if you see here, this was the concept we had. This was the tukul. We chamfered it. And you will see different variations of it. Sometimes it became a courtyard. This is the presidential villas. Sometimes they became courtyards. And then we cooled it with very natural looking water feature. And then everything is ventilated, as you see. But then we added, for the Halala wall, we added a stone wall that was horizontal, always, because the tukul, always the problem of using the tukul as a contemporary element is when it's very dark, and the circle allows you only so much. So we kind of use those 2 elements, and we kind of practiced around. But remember, everything had to be designed literally in 1 month, in 1 month and a half. Then it had to be, the structural design had to start already doing the foundation while we were doing the next architecture. So you see here, the idea of the open courtyard. The idea, if we didn't have, this was a big space, it was 250 meters square. So we designed the open courtyard to ventilate. And you see, so you will see, because some of the pictures taken by phone, by our iPhone, but I just wanted you to have a sense of every deck will have a lookout like this. No, we had to understand that on a site, while we're doing the design, we also took care of the siting so that no building will cover the other building. So you have amazing sights from your every window. This is the courtyard, and this is the water feature I was talking about. I'll now go quickly. Mingling Ethiopian cultural elements, like the stone, like all these materials, we helped with an interior decorator to work on Ethiopian local products and made them beautiful and contemporary. Lighted spaces, you see the bedroom. Here, the back of this, we designed, it was done by leather, is a beautiful product in Ethiopia. We used the leather as a back, let's say, I don't know what you call it, for the bed. Every little thing was designed to accommodate both contemporary and natural, and make it light. but always not forgetting our culture, our values. And when you go into the spaces, you feel like you are. So these are the two presidentials, and they have a small pool that separates them. But you see the way we carve the landscape without touching too much of the landscape, how you carved the little pool, then the jacuzzi, then we went to, oh, there's an exposed wall here. What should we do? This I did, I remember I stood there, I did this in one day, this artwork. It's because you have to be fast in a way. Otherwise, somebody will do something for you if you're not fast in creating. And these little lights, they were there somewhere, so we used them. So just to understand the creativity process and the building process in this case. This is the 1 and 2 bedroom villas. Here we couldn't do the courtyard, but we came up with another solution of opening these spaces. We chamfered, inverted it. Water can come through here, but then we have light and ventilation in this place as well. So, whoops. This was didn't have power. I saw it was. I'm so sorry. I forgot. So the idea that you'll see, and then I'll go quickly because we want to have a conversation. On the next one, you'll see, for example, the restaurant in the same concept. We completely opened the roof, completely. So we chamfered the roof, completely open. We said it's very hot, the climate, but we did so that people were like, how are we gonna, it's gonna rain, how are we gonna protect it? Yes, we will. So we had this kind of designed a mesh where we have the rain so that the rain can trickle into this interior courtyard that would then allow for us to have a little water feature that would cool the building inside. So, is it coming? Okay. Sorry? You keep talking, okay. So the idea is then, like I said, each and every tukul, you will see, I wanted to show you even when you choose the materials. Like I said, stone is a very, very important for Ethiopia. If you read, you can go to the Lalibela churches, you can go to the Aksum monolithic structures, all of this. We have a lot of stone, and stone is a material that every little person can work perfectly on. So we use that medium, and also, like I said, it was very slate, like rocky terrain. So we took that and then used it in the landscape to allow for the walls, because the landscape, like I said, is you had to meander and work on it. So it's very difficult to keep talking without the. Oh, sorry, I saw it blink, but I. Yeah, what can I talk about?
To the historic context and the walls there.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll talk about the wall. The historic wall is very, very important to the people and the community. The Halala Kella wall, the Halala wall. So we couldn't even cut it. You remember I said it went around in large circles over the mountain. So whenever we wanted to cut for access, we had to have all the community come and all the historical preservation people come, and then we'd say we need only 3.8 meters, and then they would make sure that the people, the community itself, was part of taking the stone one by one so that we can have an access. But then I will show you the last of my slides, just to say, is because it was so important for them. Not only did we did we use the stonework as complementing the Halala walls. We were made all the development inside the Halala wall, 15, 20 meters away from each wall. But then wherever we cut, we have these steles. Remember I showed you their musical instrument? It kind of had a shape like this. So we used the same steles to say that we're standing guard of these Halala walls that we broke. So it was a very symbolic act for us to assure the people that we want to also in the community that even though some people came and said, do arches at the entrance, we said no. We want the Halala walls to be visible and to be protected by some sort of symbolism. The other symbolism is, I'll show you, is they considered the king, Halala, as the sun god. So we put in many of in one big wall, as you go into the restaurant, we designed the sun. But we did everything with very local, even this, our artist who worked with us, she used, you'll see we've used mesh many places for sun screening, because like I said, either you have to open up, and then when you're facing west and south, you have to also screen. So we use those materials to screen the facades. So this is how we reuse the materials for that. So symbolism is very, very important as well in architecture, but also in art. You will see on one of the facades, which I didn't like, which was the convention center. We said, okay, this is an art wall, and we actually, with Coco, we designed the Halala people, actually, on that stand. So I want to show it. So architecture is art. Architecture is community. Going really inside and talking to the people and say what is important to them. So for us, I think the whole concept came out of care. So that is why, slowly. Yes. No, it came. Sorry. Yeah. So I'll quickly go because to save time. So this is like the concept, but I'm very happy that you can see, our choice of the screen. This is the mesh I was talking about, because we wanted it to be very light and floating above the structures, but also this stone, you see the stone walls. And actually, I remember choosing these tiles to match, not match, but like go. So I was like, it's green and brown. So there is a very dry season. When it becomes brown, it disappears. Then there is a green season, it becomes green. So it goes with the landscape. So as you see, you're sitting here on the upper part in one of the bedrooms, and you see this cascading roofs, but then you see them with the mountains in front. These are the interiors, more or less this inverted thing in the living room becomes a skylight at the same time. So these are all the Ethiopian beautiful fabrics that we could use, that we didn't. This is to give you an example of using the idea of the Halala wall itself as a dry stone element. These are all reused from the excavation of that actual. And then you see how it relates into the landscape. The public is at the lowest part of this cascading element. So you see how we used green roof. We used this very chamfered element for the restaurant. The rest is all cladded with the stone. You can imagine we were cutting into the landscape very, very gently to cascade. At the end of it, I'll show you a section. This section I really love, because this is where you start off. This is the Halala wall at the end of it. So we said, okay, every public element should, let's say, respect the Halala wall. So we came back and then we started cutting into the landscape and cascading this building down. This is what I said about one way we used it, is like completely open it and then have a flute and then green. This is quickly the restaurant. You come here from the reception, which you'll see, a very nice cantilevered structure. And then what I remember standing there and said, I want to have a visual where I reach there and I see the landscape. I remember saying that, and that's exactly what we did. So you come down this cascaded staircases and you reach. This is it as you enter, very simple. No drama, just the concrete and the walls. This is the reception. And then you come down, this is where we put the sun representation of King Halala. And then you go down and go into this is the Halala sun and at the night. And you see the concrete, very simple, straightforward, and then this is what you see. I mean, you go into this amazing double-story height lounge where you see the sunrise. So I put the sunrise. I remember taking this picture before it was ever designed. And this is actually, I lost the sunrise, but anyway, when I walked in, this is the visual that. So you see then, off of that is the restaurant. I always love taking pictures of people working because, yes, we design it as architects, but people make it. Let's not forget that's why we have to care for the people that work with us. So for me, I remember standing there, we had the design, but we really didn't know how to. So we all were together, the contractors, the team, them, and they were even telling us how it would be. And it's amazing because they have so much pride in this material, how we fairface the concrete. And you see here is a water feature. Water comes from up. Yes, some sprinkle. People were not happy with us. And I said, come on, the sprinkle is nice. It's very hot in here. Anyway, architects can say that sometimes. This is the convention center. Yeah, we were asked to have a 150 occupancy convention center. On the top, a museum, a cultural museum. And that's what I like about this project. It's not only for people to go and spend money, but also to connect with the culture, with the people. So people were very proud coming here. We did this nice, again here, we chose this at the uppermost, and we really didn't excavate too much. So this is how you work with the land. So this is the facade that I didn't like, that we very nicely designed a screen, and the people with their Halala wall and the mountains in the back. And this was so beautiful. In fact, Coco did, you see this is three-dimensional. She did this with chimes. And when you're there with the, it chimes and it's beautiful with the wind. This is the views. So what, somebody said to me, everywhere you look, you can see the views are amazing. I said, yeah, everything you look, it was designed to be like that. Just didn't happen. So every little thing from one building to the other designed. We have, of course, an external amphitheater. Everything, because the landscape gives you, and you are actually led by the landscape, and you're designing for that. So this is the pool, again, because of the landscape. It is an infinity pool, so you can sit you can sit inside. This is how it looks, very quickly, nature. I sat and I remember looking at this and saying, architects have this power to do something nice. For me, it's nice. I don't know what you think. Or to do something, not nice. Because for me, I kind of look through the grass, to the building, to the water, to the mountains, and beyond. So for me, I'm very happy. Anyway, so this is how it looks from the top. Imagine all this in a year and a half, to have designed, to have constructed, to have 260 employees on site. For us to do that was amazing. Oh, one of my favorites was at the end of this little, we cut, again asked permission, because our client says this would be an amazing place to have a cantilevered structure. And we did that. A little oval, that cantilevers you see, and you're suspended. Now we have the sunset, the sunrise, like I showed you, this is the sunset deck. And in the evening you go there and you're suspended and you can have your, we have here the fire pit. It's another. So this is how it looks. Finally, in a year and a half, landscape back to its natural self, and the project sitting as it is. Here is the sunset deck, and around you 270 degrees the water and the beautiful landscape of Ethiopia. And then when I talk about the people, you will not understand how the community responded to this. And our group, all of us were blessed forever. Blessing is very important in the African culture, in Ethiopian culture. You're blessed to your generations, 5 generations down, so that was nice. But then I want to again take you back, why we care. We care from the start. All these people who designed in the office, this is our office, RAS Architects, all the young people who I always say did their masters in this project. Literally design, see, contractor, build, be involved in each and everything of the design and building process. That's it. They have the knowledge of a lighter. And this is how we collab. This is a contractor, Elmi Olindo, client's rep from the Prime Minister's office and actually from ERA. This is the contractor's resident. He's like, how can you do this? I cannot do this. And these are the people who actually, why I said labor intensive, this is it. So closing off with the Halala wall and our standing guarding steles of the Dinka instrument, and thanking everybody. Gabata Lagar is the initiative of the Prime Minister. That's we're building all this tourism spots all over Ethiopia, but also all the people who contractor, engineers, people who provided us the materials, people on site, clients, reps, engineers, everybody, thanking everybody, and that architecture, if we care, can be done right. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahel. I'm going to ask Dawit to join you up here for the conversation part of the event. And just as a reminder, you need to speak into both microphones.
Oh, I didn't know.
No, you did perfectly, but when you're sharing.
It was amazing. So it was also my first time to look at the project like this. I would want to ask you, Rahel, this is one of your projects, and I have seen through the years so many of your projects. They are almost always different, materially, colors, the styles. So, but these days, like architects of your stature, or they have like similar designs. Why are your designs different? So I've seen your designs, and maybe you don't have a signature design, or do we need one? It's just a question that I'm posing, because probably all of your designs are fantastic as they are, but they look different. Just a question: do you have anything to say regarding this?
I mean, why not? But anyway, seriously, I think for me, it is responding to the context. For example, one of the projects you saw, we did a lot of embassy buildings, for example, in Addis Ababa. It's a very urban area. You're given a small plot, so you respond to that plot in a certain way. I want to respond to the environment, but I think in each project, there is always this response to How do I make it light? How do I make it to connect with the environment? How do I shade it, not always using, let's say, air conditioning and so sustainably? How can we, but then the eye for scale, the eye for color, wherever it is important for me. Yeah, no more answer.
Okay. So the second has got to do with your education. You are educated in Ethiopia only. You have not been elsewhere for your education. You have practiced in Ethiopia, but now you are globally noticed. You know, you were not educated in Harvard or in Europe or, you know, in one of those premier places. Then what can you say about a humble beginning and going up, you know, being noticed globally, even coming here and you know, being part of like selected few global offices? How did it happen?
Okay. So, you know, I was one of those people who never thought in 5 years I'll be here or in 10 years I'll be here. I mean, I started with a very nice project in Ethiopia when I graduated, 5 years. By the way, our program is 5 years degree in architecture. At that time, there was nothing else, unless you went out of the country somewhere else. So, and then I was lucky enough to be chosen or to be asked on this project of the international IEC, International Evangelical Church and Theology College, with our teacher from 3rd grade, who conceptually designed it, and we were there 2 years, design-build project. I think I fell in love with working with people, because I remember we took even street kids, because it was a church. It couldn't pay us. By the way, I was designing jewelry and making money for ourselves because they couldn't pay us. So in a way, we came from a very hard background. It was the communist time. It was changing. There was nothing. But I was so happy with where I was. I just felt at home, because I felt at that time, I remember, of course, I was 23, 24, but I always felt I am doing something with the people I care. So I think it was always about that, the care for those around you. And I was the kind of person who always wanted to be present in whatever I did. I never looked, but my family were here, all of them, in the US. And they asked me, you have to come for your master's, you have to do this. And I said, no. There's always something to do. And then, of course, the boom came. You know, so it was the perfect time for us as architects to stay there. So I think being in place, being very focused, resilient, obviously there's a lot of challenges, but I think doing the small things, one project at a time. I was working on the Fistula Hospital. You know, they were meaningful projects for community. They were not flashy projects, but they were all meaningful projects. So for me, it made sense to stay there. And when you see the impression you make on the people, you don't want to be anywhere else. So I think that's, honestly, that's what. And then I got married. I had 2 children. You get stuck. I mean, and then the office, it's not a big office. There's 16, 18 people, projects churning every day, firefighting every day. That was it. And then one day somebody calls you and says, okay, I think you did well enough. Come and get the Aga Khan Award. You're like, yes. And just continues. Thank you, Dawit.
And through all this, how do you distress? I mean, imagine 1.5 years of construction, design. You are a woman, you are a mommy, you are a wife. I don't know. You are a boss at the office. How do you get time for yourself?
Good question. You don't. Honestly, imagine this is one of our projects in the office. We have 6 on the table, big projects like this. We have the second one in Wenji, similar one. We have a hospital just now in Bahar Dar. We have 2 projects, Swiss Embassy, another embassy we completed, Namibia Embassy. I think for me, it's just distressing is about mental energy. I don't know. I told my daughter, who's in university in San Francisco, she was like, I said, there is no other option than getting up, putting your foot on the, every morning. I'm so exhausted, don't want to face responsibilities. What I do is I force myself to get up, take the shower. But then to get to my office, I stop like 2 times in coffee shops. Because I design, by the way, in coffee shops. Because once you go into the office, you don't do work. You're inundated with problems. So design ideas, I have my iPad, so I send it. So by the time I reach my office, they're all working on it, on the idea. So I don't know. I think we came also through a very difficult childhood. So resilience is part of that. There's no other way than to be. So for me, I think also as a woman, a mother, it was one of the most difficult times. When I was doing the Netherlands embassy, full time, and having 2 kids, one after the other. So this is for all of us women here, and men, because you have to understand and support us too. It's very important. So for me, I think it was difficult. You're up till 3 a.m. and have to go and participate in a 20 male meeting. The only way you can overcome that is to show them that you can do work. That's it. So for me, I think it's a will. And the question is, I always take off. For example, like I said, the coffee shop is one example. If I come here to Florida, straight from Addis, I will make sure I'll have 3 days for myself somewhere to be quiet. Because it takes a lot of energy. When I go to Bahar Dar, I take an extra day to be quiet. I walk a lot, because you have to be, otherwise it's very difficult. I don't know, also please understand the context of how we work is very different from, because you have everything here, let's say. I come here to my sisters and like everything is ordered, everything is there, everything. I'm like, you guys are so lucky. And LA, I was in LA 2 weeks ago, the power went off and everybody was panicking. In our country, power goes off every other, I don't know.
Every day.
Every other day. And in the office, you have to now think about what to do for all those people in the office when there is no power. So now everybody knows to take something, print something, ready to work on a powerless day. So you have to really navigate many challenges. But yeah, here I am, so I guess something is happening.
My last question. Now you are very famous. You are now. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
In 5 years' time, I don't want to know where I'll be. I want to be surprised, Dawit. This is my question, my answer. I have many things in mind, because just to say that I'm also working, and people tell me, where do you get the time? A lot with young people. I have a mentorship program. We have a space called Abran, where we discuss our problems, our issues, but not only that, but we do research and we exhibit. And this is to allow young people who can't find the work. How many students are we graduating architecture every year now in Ethiopia?
A lot, like more than 500 or I don't know.
600, okay.
600,
So, and we have
700.
maybe 240, 250 offices. So where do all these people go? So we're trying to make space. So in my office there is a table or 2 that allows young people to come and we discuss. We have many interns, but we collaborate with universities like this to have cross border, let's say, connections, because that's how people get. And I'm very happy to say some very fine things have come for otherwise those kids that couldn't have this kind of opportunity. So I think in 5 years I'll be where I'll be, but it'll be. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
So I can give the floor to the questions, yes, from the audience. Yes, one. Okay. Yeah, you do have to see.
Like, you use a lot of color. So, like, when, because you don't see a lot of, like, colorful architecture here, especially here in the United States, where it's, like, very gray, dull. What inspired you to use so much color, and how do you decide how you're going to use it?
That is a very funny question.
She needs a mic. And just, can you repeat the question?
So she said, here in the U.S., there's not so much color. Most of the buildings are kind of dull. Did you say that? Yes. And how do you use so much color, and how do you decide actually to make? Just 2 weeks ago, before I came, or maybe 3 weeks ago, we just finished an Ethiopian Airlines, one of my favorite projects. We did a project, and it is full of color, but the brand color of the airline, which is green, yellow, and red. But we use them in different shades and different. And the client walked up to me and said, Rahel, you're very different. You're
Bold,
you're very bold, but the way she said it is like the client's rep. She says, you're very bold with colors. And I said, don't you like it? And he says, I love it. And I said, okay. So I think it's like everything else. I think you have to come from here. I don't know. So when I see something, if it's dark, you have to make it brighter. If it's an environment where there's a green backdrop, you have to make a dark red, or I don't know. But we use mostly, I love red. By the way, if you go through the website, you'll go, oh no, this lady is going red again. But I think red in different shades, powerful. And it is us, it's our culture. We're full of color. I was telling David when I was in the Loeb Fellowship, everybody's wearing black. Here you're not, I don't know. And I was like, And I was like, I went shopping to get black t-shirts because I felt so out of place. And then I eventually said, no, I don't have to. This is not me. So we wear a lot of colors. So, but having said that, I think we have a new mandate from the municipality to paint all colors in the Addis, light gray, light beige, light white, white. So we'll see what will happen with that, because we are very bold with our colors. Oh, this is mine.
The second question, maybe.
Wait, hold on one sec. I'm just going to give you the mic.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So you said that, like, architecture is also a lot about, like, using your experiences and, like, learning from the context. So how would you say that, like, would you say that for each new group that you go to, do you use ideas that you've learned from other groups, or is it, like, purely contextual to them? How would you say, like, you balance it out?
Okay, so you're right. I mean, in fact, in my office, because we take such a long time sometimes, I say, we don't have to reinvent the wheel 50,000 times. We have that detail 10 times, so use the detail. You're right, you cannot manage to reinvent everything, but you can manage to give it its own, let's say, language. Because that's why he's asking me, why are your projects so different from each other, is because, if we're designing for visually impaired people now in the north, that in Bahar Dar we're designing a hospital, what do we do? I don't want yellow, red, and blue in that building. It has to be soft, but there is a yellow strip that will lead them. So it is very contextual, but we don't have to reinvent everything. Yeah.
Another question. Okay. So after you, who would we go to? At the back, and on this part? No one here?
They're in the back.
Okay. First, second,
and third.
Hello, thank you for this presentation. It's very interesting. And I'm a PhD student here with UF, and I'm working on a project studying urban climate change adaptation in West Africa. So I spent a lot of time in informal or disadvantaged settlements. And I was wondering, because you said architects have power, so it's also political. To what extent do architects and as designers of our habitats have a responsibility to design and build in disadvantaged areas? And are there examples of that occurring in Ethiopia or elsewhere that you're aware of?
So, yes, I mean, like I said, disadvantage, for example, my first project that inspired me to be human is the Fistula Hospital. We designed over 10 years. These are the most disadvantaged women, young women. I mean, you can read about it. Fistula Hospital is very well known, but they were very, very small buildings. So architecture doesn't have to be, it can be when you have the opportunity. So yes, disadvantages I see in many forms. But for example, right now we did with Delft University, we did a social housing project, an alternative social housing project to the ones we see. We do community projects, for example, I do a big park, but park for the neighborhood children. Pro bono work, personally I do a lot. And I try to, again, this for me, even if it is a high-end project, you penetrate and try to work with the community. So I didn't tell you, for example, most of some of the things we used for decoration was made by the local women. For example, all the people who worked on the stonework, on everything, were the local people. Now it's working, the lodge is working, and most of them are from the local community. So there is a ripple effect when we say for social, for community. For me, it's not specific, it's very broad, including the architects and the people we worked with. So I don't know if that makes sense. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm a freshman student. So I noticed that you mentioned people and identity is like a very important value for you in designing. So I wonder, like, how do you start from that? I mean, how do you know the people that you are going to design to know what they want to see from your design? For example, it's also like a challenge. For example, like for maybe, let's say, from my country and I design for another people from another country from a different place, like what would you say, how do you start to approach that problem?
So I have by the way worked in collaboration with many architects from around the world, especially on the embassy buildings, because usually the embassy buildings, they bring their own local architect and then they collaborate. I mean, their local, meaning their country's local architects, and then they collaborate with architects from the place of work. So I have learned a lot because some architects come with their fixed idea and just impose it on the people. So imagine we are the community, the people that it's been designed of. Some architects, they come and collaboratively ask you or work with you. How? What is the culture? How do you feel? To the point of when you design a kitchen, me and you will not design the same kitchen. Me and you will not design the same kitchen because the kitchen that I know and I'm happy with to work is not a galley kitchen. We have an outdoor kitchen. We have a mit'ad beit. I don't know if you know injera, which is our local bread that needs another space. And so there is a lot of knowledge from communities. So we have to go there. We have to see the way they live. We have to even be with them, read and read and read and read about that if you're coming from outside. And hopefully, that's what I said, collaborate with other people. So for me, there is no value in being one architect who decides everything. Like I said, even we designed something and we changed our details or our ideas because the local people told us this is the best way to do it, even after. So I think we don't have to be egoistic. I think we have to be a bit free. We have to be very allowing different opportunities to come. But I think mostly we Google, if we don't know. We use Google, we use the people themselves. I mean, any opportunity to arm yourself with knowledge before you even start the first line. I think that's what I would say. Yeah.
Well, you kind of answered the question I was going to say, but I was going to ask like how you collaborate so well with other architects and maintain a cohesive concept.
So.
Rahel, can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So how do you collaborate with people, with other architects, and come up with a cohesive one design? It's difficult. It's difficult. Sometimes it's like, yes, you have to let go, of an idea that is very powerful for him or her, and then you have to come in and give your ideas at the same time. I remember when that was very true when we did the Dutch embassy, because even the two architects, Bia and Dick, they were very different. They had different ideas. And then us locally, me and Joseph, we had different ideas. So 4 architects, can you imagine? But I think we all had this amazing, play where you'd come in. So by then you know personalities, So the whole thing is maybe I could be good at, like my daughter says, you have OCD, I'm very, I know how to push and do things. Then the other could be very, imaginative and dreamer. So when you collaborate, you have to also be mindful of that. Not only collaborating with architects, but imagine working under a contractor. I think for architects, that could be the most. And that's what we're doing now for 3 or 4 projects, because, in that case, I have to say, we choose the people that we can work with, because we already have that respectful relationship in place. So sometimes, like yesterday, I said, no, you have to do the detail like that, and the contractor said, I will not do it, full stop. So I said, okay, and I backed away. So there's that give and take. And I say, you have to have the personality to work with people. And that's a skill as architects we have to develop very, very, very early on.
One over there.
I was just wondering how you go about, for example, an artist block, or do you have any examples with the Halala project, of times you were just overwhelmed and were stuck in your ways? How do you go about overcoming that, I guess I would say?
Overcoming
a block,
a block.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it happens all the time. That, because, and then that, especially this project, for me, this kind of project, including now the wind, you don't have time to maybe next week I'll think. No, they're waiting for you. They're casting concrete, waiting for your detail. You don't have time. So sometimes I just walk away and tell Kirubel or one of, Bemnas, just come up with something. Just give it to them. And it's like, no, but you have to see it. I trust you. Just do it. So, because we're humans. We'll never have all the answers. If somebody says he has all the answers, or she, I don't know. So we don't. So that is what means letting go and trusting your people. Even we ask the contractor himself. Belai, we call him, we put him on a speaker and says, we're stuck. Do you have any ideas? He says, yeah, you can do it. Sketch it and send. And then we kind of, use that. So it is very, very open. Unless we were working like that, We will not have a project like this in the specified time, definitely.
I'm a freshman student, and you mentioned language as something that made your project stand out, and I was curious that in navigating architectural language, did you learn something new in this project that you're going to be moving on forward to further ones?
Definitely. I think, sometimes I get surprised by the outcome even. I don't know how to describe it because you've already obviously rendered it. And of course, BIM helps a lot because in this short time, we couldn't have done all this collaborative work with the engineers if we wasn't Revit. But even having said it in 3D, sometimes being even confused looking at the 3D, I think the end result, is when you walk into that space and feel it is right. And when everybody says that, people say it's more powerful than so when we're actually there. So I think it is a good question. There are some things that I would never do again in this project because it was I remember to fit these roofs because they were different angles. I used to say, why did we ever do that? Could have been a simple thing. But then, some things are worth it because then when you're inside, when you're feeling the space, you're like, wow. People say, did you come up with this idea? So I will never do this one. We've learned something out of it. So we'll do it in another way next time. So yes, thank you.
We've talked a lot about how architecture works with communities, but in what way would you say that your architecture impacts the living standard of the communities or even the livelihood of the people or even the economy? Like, how can architecture change communities?
Yeah, up to this point, I have to say that we've worked a lot, I've worked a lot on smaller hospitals, a lot of schools, embassies, which when you do, when you do the embassies, it kind of supports the other, let's say, not so thin project. So as an office, that is a big role you have to think of. Yes, you can take big projects all the time. You can take money. By the way, we don't have so much money-making things in Ethiopia. But anyway, what I'm saying is you could take one kind of project, but then you offset one from each other. And then sometimes you might even lose your language, as you said. But for me, all the projects that we have taken make sense to me to take them for some reason. And we have said no to many of them, especially these days because I don't like high-rise buildings. Never done one because it doesn't make sense to me. And I have a right to say no. And my son says to me, you cannot retire without doing one skyscraper. And I refuse because I don't think I'll ever do that. But so that's the language you create as an architect. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Doesn't mean you're not, you didn't make it. And you don't do it because you want to impress people. You want to do projects, for me, at least one at a time, focus on them, be present, make the best that we can. Because sometimes people also say, this is Africa, this is Ethiopia. You can be a, any building, any substandard project. No, it's about excellence for 'em. Whether you do a remote building, a hospital that doesn't have money, or this kind of project that, has a little bit of money, you have to give it the same attention to detail, the same excellence, the same, So I think for me, the language is that. That is how you connect with the community and make them feel good about their, let's say, project or building. Economically. Okay, so economically, I have to say some of the apartments we've designed, they make a lot of money because they were designed well. These places, I hope it will make money, it will change the lives of communities. I think it will, definitely. Because as I said earlier, you're impacting at different levels during construction, then thereafter, during now, when it's being used. And in fact, even the little villages, remember I said we didn't even find a place to eat at that time. Now the guy who was working as a cook for the for the workers now has his own restaurant, which we went and ate in his restaurant. So it's a ripple effect. In an economy like Ethiopia, little things make a big difference. So the ripple effect is felt.
You talk about how you have to find like integrating caring for like the cultural retention. Is there ever a time where you think that you had to sacrifice like the functionality of the building or the intention of the building over the cultural retention, or like how you integrated the culture of the surrounding areas, but you had to see more about the focus on how the building would work over the design part of it almost?
Almost never, I have to say. Because then sometimes people say, then you are a functionalist. I say, no, I'm not. Then you are a formalist. No, I'm not. So I don't know how to describe myself, but I think that is one of the biggest, I take that very seriously. If it doesn't work for the people, if it doesn't work functionally, if it doesn't give you a good feeling when you are sitting in there or working in there, then it's not working. So for me, because people want to, I don't know, maybe it's a Western thing, I don't know, like you have to be either or, a formalist or a functionalist, or I said, no, I could be everything, depending on so for example, the hospital we're building now is a very simple gable roof hospital with minimum materials, but I love it. Because then you design with courtyards, you think about how the people would sit in the sun, there's a lot of contributions you can do. It's not this or that, but absolutely number one comes what you're saying, the functionality has to work. And then again, of course, you're never 100% right all the time. I go back to the buildings that I designed maybe 10 years ago and say, I could have done this and it would have been perfect. Of course, you say that all the time. It's a learning. I say always architecture, you cannot learn it at any point. 30 years later, I'm still learning. If you give me a project today, I'm still studying it the same way I would do 30 years ago. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? Research it. It's the same thing because you're never designing the same thing over and over again.
Question because we're running out of time, but I did want to tell everybody before we break that the recording for this is going to be available online very soon. And you'll have other opportunities also to ask questions of Dawit Benti. He's going to be here through the end of the week. He'll be here after the hurricane. But also I wanted to encourage all of you who are interested in asking questions of Rahel Shawl to, she's shared her website, so please reach out to her by email. But yeah, for our last question.
Okay. I know you mentioned working towards excellence for every project beforehand. I just wanted to ask, as like a perfectionist, is there, do you feel like there's any pressure or stress to kind of create something that's like, not necessarily perfect, but like putting your best foot forward in all of your projects, and how do you overcome that stress?
Wow, that's a very nice question. Yeah, because like if the people at RASA, my architects, heard you, they would say, yes, it's the same questions we have, because I'm never satisfied. You know, like, is it a personal thing? Because you kind of see that it could be better, it could be better, it could be better. Then it's good, and then you go and then you think overnight, but there is a better solution. And so that is why I said architecture, unless you put a stop to it, you will never go forward. So you have to train yourself. Number one, if you're very stressed, you just leave it and you walk away for a minute, for an hour, whatever it takes. And then you come back, it will come back to you. So stress management, you have to learn very early, I think, because this is how I did that. I would walk, you know, to the mountain, because at the back of our school, there's in the west, you've seen it, there's a sunset place that I walk frequently when I'm stressed. But I think to doggedly go on it is not a good idea. You have to leave it, go walk, talk to your friends, have coffee, come back and look at it from another angle. So, but having said that, architecture is so, design is evolving. So there is no beginning and an end. Especially add construction to it, add monitoring, supervising, with all these elements, engineering, you know, cutting your spaces, blah, blah, blah. So it's very stressful. It's a very, one of, I think, stressful. Yesterday I didn't sleep. Day before I didn't sleep because I was working for my office and preparing for this. And so my friend said, what do you mean you haven't slept for 2 days, almost 2 hours each day? And I said, we're used to it. So I kind of course, maybe you'll crash on the third day, but I think you have to, yeah, prepare yourself for that, but prepare yourself already from now. Most of you are freshmen, I think, to learn how you personally can distress, because it's not the same for all of us. You'll be okay.
I have a small question. Are you a difficult boss to please in the office? Because you have so many architects. How are you, even for the contractors?
Probably it's a love-hate relationship. Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, even in the, but I'm also want to, you know, pressure the contractor that we can do better. We can do better. We can. I don't know where it comes from, because sometimes I say, I could just walk away. Who cares if the window is a bit like that? Nobody would know. Maybe I am the one who's seeing it, but I cannot walk away from that angle that's distorted. So I don't know if it's a personal way. It's you know, you're built like that, but I cannot see and pass. And that has a good point. I know I stress the workers, yeah. But I hope that also they learn, you know, at the end of the project, why we're doing that. So I hope so. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all.